Hey, everybody. Tonight we have with us Kenney W. Irish, the Cryptopunkologist. He is an author, hardcore punk musician, marketing sales professional, overall passion for cryptids, Bigfoot research. This really been looking forward to this show. Talking with us. This is going to be an exciting conversation. Kenney W. Irish is next.
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is white. Justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right, everybody. At this time, I would like to welcome to the show Kenney W. Irish. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Hey, thanks again for being on the show, man. This is we're talking a little bit off the air, and I've been really looking forward to this.
Awesome. Yeah, me as well. And don't mind me, I'm just still sharing it right
oh, no,
now.
hey,
so.
we're not gonna don't threaten us with a good time. I mean, please.
Yeah.
So
I never would.
Here, I'm going to bring this up here, everybody. We're having him on not only to talk about cryptids and Bigfoot with his show, the New York Bigfoot Society. We're also having him. He has a new book out, American Cryptids in Pursuit of the Elusive Creatures, available. You can get linked through his site right here, Kenney, kwirish.com. You can go there. It links to everything. His Facebook page, his New York Bigfoot Society, all the events. Go there. Amazon, highly rated book. This fantastic book by all reviews that have gone over here. I mean, we're talking highly reviewed too. I mean, there's some that you get just a couple. I mean, I think if I remember right, this one already has I want to say 30 some reviews.
Yeah, 38.
Yeah, 38, which is amazing. So this one just covers everything from Sasquatch, Mothman, Champ the Lake, Champlain Monster. Kind of tease those in our promo for this, but so everybody will link there. But so we're going to just talk. We're just going to get kind of right into the same with one. What got you to the point, not only just through the search, but to call yourself the Cryptopunkologist?
Yeah.
Were you given that name, or was that something that just kind of fit?
Yeah, that was definitely a name that was it kind of came out of a conversation. It was given to me. Usually my hair's a lot shorter. Well, let me go back. I started playing the guitar when I was like 15, and I loved hair bands and stuff like that. Like Motley Crue and everything. And then one of my friends handed over to me this mixtape. He's like, "Hey, I stole this from my older brother. Check this out." I'm like, all right, I didn't know what it was. I brought it home, and it had the Misfits on it. It had Minor Threat on it. It had all these amazing bands on it. I was like, wow, you got to be kidding me. I didn't even know this music existed. And then from there, because punk, kind of turned into hardcore. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a combination. And so I started playing, in a bunch of punk and hardcore bands. I just love music. It's just something that it's just a huge passion for me. And so cryptids are also a huge passion for me as well. I grew up in northern Vermont and near Lake Champlain. And at the age, I believe, of 4 years old, somebody had mentioned to me about Champ, Lake Champlain monster, and being a Godzilla fan at the time, I was just like completely blown away. So ever since then, I've just been really, really like into monsters and cryptids and folklore and legend. And that's where everything kind of came together. It was probably about a year and a half ago. I was talking with the founder of the group, the New York Bigfoot Society that I'm with. His name's Gary Robusto, awesome guy. And he, was commenting on my hair, and because it was shorter, and it used to be in like a mohawk, and and he's like, wow, he's like, you're like the CryptoPunk. He's like the Cryptopunkologist, and I'm like, see, I work in like sales and marketing, like for like my day job and like leadership, and I was just like, that's like marketing gold right there. I'm just like, who's gonna hear that and then forget that, and that was the biggest thing for me. I was like, wow, that's really going to kind of stick out, because I mean, you've got the greats out there like the Lauren Colemans, the Ken Gerhards, the Lyle Blackburns, and I'm just like, I'm only like half of what they are when it comes to this subject. So I'm like, all right, yeah, let's put the two passions together. So it feels good, because a lot of the time, people will be doing one thing. They'll have a couple passions, but they'll really only have time for one. And putting them together, even when I'm doing one, not the other, I still kind of feel like, I'm still part of the other passion. So it's just been really, really good. And it's been fun too. It's a conversation starter. A lot of people like to ask me about it and what it means. And, but yeah, I definitely didn't give it to myself. It was given to me, but, I took it and ran with it.
Well, it's good, because you can't self-gloss. I mean, that's the most important thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know too many people that have done that. I'm just like, you can't do that. I'm not calling you that.
It doesn't work. It's always like, you always have this place like, I'm the machine. You're like, how'd you get that? Well, I feel like I'm a machine. So that doesn't work.
Well, I remember it was back in, I'd say maybe the, I don't know, mid to late 90s. I don't know, for some reason, like the Tasmanian devil became popular for like a year. And like all these like people I knew all of a sudden started calling themselves Taz.
Yeah.
I was like, no, you can't do that. Like I had a friend, he's like, no, just start calling me. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. We give you your nickname. So
well, and I don't know if you watch the show, any of our shows or not, but Austin, who's right below you on the screen, I nicknamed Ginger Squatch.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Because he was always talking about, he'll hear something in the woods. I'm like, yeah, it's probably the other hunters seeing that. And over there, they look over and there's a ginger squatch walking through the woods. And so it's kind of like Viking and ginger squatch kind of stuck with them, and we're still really working.
Because at work, because me and Craig are the same height and the same, we're beards. And he was like, you're from the mountains. You're a mountain man. You're a Viking. I was like, hey, I'll take it. Hey, I like it.
Everybody needs a nickname. Everybody has to have. There's got to be a nickname. And it can't. I mean, the big guys are always called Tiny. The little guys are always called Big Guy. It just everybody's got to have a nickname.
Yeah, we're trying to find a better one for Chris, but right now it's Etch a Sketch. Because we'll say something to him, and he's like, "Who's coming on again?" You're like, "Seriously, I just told you." I mean, did you shake your head and it's gone? That's beautiful right there. Yeah, actually. So that's where we go. So I agree completely. Can't self-gloss. No,
one of our good friends of the show wants to know, if April, what's your favorite cryptid?
She took my question. Go ahead, April.
Chris wants to know, what's your favorite cryptid?
My favorite cryptid? A lot of people see me as like a Bigfoot guy, and I think it's mainly because of the group that I'm with. It's titled the New York Bigfoot Society. But my favorite is again, my first love would be Champ. I just remember, just as a young kid, like getting to Lake Champlain and just being like, all my friends are like in the water, and I'm like up to my knees, and that's as far as I'm going, because I know there's a monster in this lake, and I also didn't want to like dunk my head and like miss it. So Champ is just, it was my first cryptid love, if you will. I mean, I had heard of like Bigfoot, but it was always like kind of funny because it's just like Bigfoot. So it just never really resonated with me until, I don't think I actually heard the word Sasquatch until like I was my senior year in high school. But I'm a Champ's in my heart. I mean, it's just, I remember drawing pictures of Champ and like I remember doing projects in school on Champ. So,
so that you can definitely see where that is. I mean, I grew up in about central and western parts of Oregon. So I was just 3 to 4 hours away from where the Patterson film was taken.
Mm-hmm.
So that Bigfoot was always the big one over here. And then when we got over here and we did a show, the Pukwudgie is now my one. I absolutely love that thing.
That's awesome. I've got a friend who's actually an ambassador for the New York Bigfoot Society. He lives in Western New York. His name's Joe. He's got a podcast that he does. I think he does it like 7-8 times a week. I think he just gets on and just talks to people. He's him and his wife, awesome people. But he swears to God that he was out in the woods in Western New York and he came across one. He said he saw this like little kind of like goblin troll like thing, like a 1.5 feet tall, walk out, and he's like, I'm just looking and I don't understand it. And I believe he said it just kind of walked behind a tree and that was it. And he just walked away not knowing what it was and didn't say anything for a long time. And then, during his studies, he came across, the Pukwudgie, and he's like, that's what it is.
Yeah. And you get those people that say, well, it was just a porcupine standing up. And I'm like, if anybody's gone there, I don't know how many porcupines I've seen them. I don't think I've ever seen one that's gone up on its hind legs and started walking.
I've never seen that. And normally they don't stand, like they'll put their backs to you because they're going to like shoot needles at you from everything that I understand. So I don't know. Weird.
Yeah. I mean, and everybody that says it's, because that's the description. They've got this hair, like, quills for hair, stand up at 1.5, people are like, oh, you're just looking at a porcupine. I'm like, once again, I want to know anybody that's gone out in the woods and found a porcupine and even seen them at any point stand up on their back legs and look around.
Yeah,
I mean, I've never seen it. I mean, I've seen porcupines all the time, and I've never seen one stand up on its hind legs. So I was kind of hooked on that one, especially the stories of it coming in the house and all this. I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, Joe was saying, it was like there was, I mean, it was like a little human. It was like a little human walking around. So he didn't say that there was anything else with it, and he just kind of hung on to it for a while, and then started talking about it when he's like, okay, I can put a name to this. So
on our last show, we discussed, was he petrified? Is he petrified now, or does he often think of it again, or was it a traumatic experience for him?
It wasn't traumatic. He just like didn't like. He just had no clue what just happened. Like he was just like taken way back by it. Like what did I just see? Like I can't ever tell somebody I just saw this. And I can't even, I don't even know what I saw. Like, how do you even begin to explain it? So I don't believe it was traumatic for him. I think it was just more like, like one of those, like, moments, like what just happened? Did I really just see what I saw? Now I'm going to ask him more questions. So.
In that case, everybody who we don't see them on a regular basis, they're like, well, why didn't you get your phone out? Why didn't you take a picture? That's the last thing you're thinking about. I've been in a car with a GPS on and I forget, I'm looking for my phone and it's in my hand. I'm like, oh, my phone is in my hand. Okay.
Yeah. You know how many times I've been sitting there on my phone and I felt my phone vibrate next to me, even though it's in my hand, like it's in my pocket. And I'm like, so yeah, I mean, I completely get that.
Yeah. It's, kind of circle back a little bit on your book too. And that was one of the things that's great about your book is you kind of take a tour across the country, just going through and breaking down, one of the ones I wanted to ask you is, out of all of them, what do you think is probably the most probable? And, and the same, like the flip on that, the least probable, where this is pretty much more of just a folklore, a tale that's just been told.
So are you talking about in regards to cryptids, or at the end of each chapter where there's just like a recorded Bigfoot sighting?
Well, each chapter, kind of the way each chapter, and then just just as you're going through, because you always see those lists. I mean, like everything from the Oklahoma octopus to to those ones. What would you say in that aspect? Which one do you think is probably the most probable? Like it truly, I believe this exists. To this one is, I'm pretty sure this one was just told to scare kids and just to be a cool story.
Yeah, I would say any of the creatures that are kind of serpentine. Because, I mean, what are we, 5% of the ocean has been explored, and a lot of some lakes, that aren't man-made, like Lake Champlain used to be connected to the Atlantic Ocean, hundreds of thousands of years ago. So you have to know that there still has to be some type of connection there, whether, it being underground or however it is. So I would definitely say probably anything serpentine, over something, that, would necessarily live in the woods, because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of, ocean, that we'll never see, and bodies of water, that connect. So I would definitely say that would probably be, the most credible in my opinion. Definitely. I don't see why, Sasquatch couldn't exist. And I've personally never seen one. I've tried, but I'm always late to the party. Like I there after the fact, or I'm there because somebody reported that they saw one. I'm never that guy that actually gets to actually see anything. But as far as, not necessarily existing, there's crazy, cryptids that are, I don't know. I don't like the Dover Demon. Love the Dover Demon. Love the story behind it. But yet, I don't know. Is there one? Are there multiples? Another one is, which I it's a phenomenal story and it's awesome. But the Bat Squatch, Mount St. Helens erupted, and they believe that the Earth moved and it released what is now pronounced or seen as the Bat Squatch. I don't necessarily believe that actually exists, but at the same time, some of these flying cryptids, though, some folks have brought up some good points too. Because if you believe in, like let's say, heaven and hell and demons and angels, the folks have actually said that they actually believe that some of these flying entities are actually demons, which, hey, who's to say that they're not, and again, the Bat Squatch didn't show up until, again, after the eruption of the volcano. And then another one, like I believe Virginia is well known for it, the sheep squatch, which is like it's horrible looking. It's got like the body of like, it's got like a body of like a like a Sasquatch kind of, with like sheep legs, and it's got like the big sheep head with the big horns, and they say it bounces his head off of trees, and that's kind of how it scares people off. But so I don't know. I don't necessarily know, and I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I don't know. I haven't really seen. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
That's a sheep squatch, and for anybody, it's basically, it looks like a demon version of a half ram sheep, thing with just the hooves and the claw. Yeah, that's definitely something that you don't hear much about them, and there's rarely ever like any sightings. So I don't know. I think it might fall under the misidentification category, but either way, it's the stories behind it, and then the individuals that have claimed to have seen it, have definitely, it's affected them. So,
wow.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at it as you were talking about. I was looking at some of the pictures, and to me, it's almost along the lines of Krampus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The way that with the horns, and just the other one was a little more like that, but here's like another one where it's just kind of more like the sheep, with some horns. But yeah.
Well, I've also thought, like, when people are talking about sheep squatch, like if you look at like the legend and lore of the Wendigo, Like that has like big horns as well. I mean, it looks more like deer horns, but you know, a lot of people actually kind of put those together, and some folks have said, you know, that they believe, like, you know, that they didn't see a sheep squatch, they've actually seen like a Wendigo, and vice versa.
Yeah, and here's one. If anybody wants a cuddlier version, you can buy those cuddlier versions. The sheep squatch, if you want.
I love that.
If you want one that's not as scary, if you want to, you know, have that for your kid to tuck them in.
Do you know
No,
how many sightings have been on that one? Because that could be just a general, like a costume. I mean, I've never even heard of that one. I mean, I don't think Craig...
You know, it really depends, I guess, on who you talk to. I know that there's been enough where folks talk about it. It is in books. It's been in TV shows where people have brought it up. So it's enough where it's being taken serious to a degree where it's talked about, where you've got, like the Loveland Frogman, like, it's been in books, this and that, but like nobody really even talks about it. But sheep squatch, I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of, I'd say maybe in the last, 5 or 6 years, it's kind of moved up the ladder a little bit. Kind of like with like Dogman. Like Dogman is like, I'd say in many ways to getting to a point where it's almost knocking Sasquatch out of first place for most recognized.
What do you think is behind that? Because that's one of those, I won't lie, growing up, I had never heard of Dogman before. And all of a sudden, this one's just like, I see him all the time. I'm like, last I checked, werewolves weren't that prevalent.
Yeah.
And you pretty much have, so we're just saying that there's these werewolf type creatures just roaming everywhere and people are seeing them all the time. And I'm like, so what do you think this is? I mean, do you think it's just people are now looking, or do you think it's just that pareidoia type thing? You think you see it?
Mm-hmm. I think, to be honest with you, I've always put Dogman in the werewolf column. Like I've always kind of put them together like that. But I think, to be honest with you, I think it's just like with Bigfoot. Like you go back 15, 20 years ago and you talked about Bigfoot, like people just laughed at you. Yep. But you had like TV shows that came out. I mean, you always had TV shows, like you had Monster Quest, which I'm a huge fan of. Doug Hischek, producer of that show, phenomenal guy. I've talked to him a few times on the phone, phenomenal guy. But then you had this show that came out that anybody could watch and follow, and it was Finding Bigfoot. Love it or hate it, like I love the show. Love it or hate it, it made Bigfoot mainstream. And saying that you liked Bigfoot or believed in Bigfoot was no longer crazy. It became cool. And I think nowadays, to be honest with you, to say that you've saw a type of cryptid, you're not looked at as crazy anymore. Like people think that's cool now. So I think maybe, when it comes to Dogman, maybe people, had sightings and now they're talking about it more, because again, where before you were laughed at for even bringing these types of beings up. Now it's like when you bring it up, people want to talk to you about it, and it's like cool. It's like I remember years back, like watching. I think it was in 2002, like when the first like Ghost Hunters like episode came on. Like I don't really do anything with the paranormal. I stay, that stuff scares the crap out of me, so I kind of stay away from that. But like I remember seeing the show and being like, "What is this?" And thinking like, because prior to this, the only thing that I knew was like the show Ghostbusters or the movie Ghostbusters. Yep. And then seeing the shows and being like, people really do this, and that kind of, brought me kind of, out of my shell to kind of look into it. And now, like everywhere you go, anybody you talk to, they're a paranormal investigator, they're a researcher. And I really think that, the show Finding Bigfoot did the same thing for the field, and it made people not, it made it cool. It really did. And then it turned into like a marketing thing. I mean, you've got, Jack Links, which I believe was actually out before Finding Bigfoot, but then you've got Sasquatch, Bigfoot Pizza. You've got all these different things now that are marketed now. So again, you're not really, you're not really looked at as crazy anymore. And now it's like cool to, say it. And I remember, I mean, when I lived in Vermont, I mean, again, I mean, you brought up Bigfoot, like people just kind of like laughed at you, you know, and now it's like you bring it up and everybody's like, oh, my cousin's brother saw it, you know, and it's just like everybody's talking about it now. So I really think that that's, you know, Dogman is a cool cryptid regardless. Let's say whether it's real, let's say whether it's not, it's cool. It's really cool. And I think nowadays, again, I mean, bringing something up like that, you know, something werewolf like, I just think it's, you know, I think that has a lot to do with it.
I mean,
yeah, one thing too is like one episode I was listening to that you were being interviewed, and I'll let you kind of give it. You'll explain it heck of a lot better than I will. But the way that you approach finding stuff, I really liked how you just go to Google Maps, you know, Google Earth, find a town, go there and start making phone calls.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that was when I was writing the book, American Cryptids. So what I wanted to do when I was putting the book together was I didn't want to write the same book that all the other greats, you know, have done. And when I say all the other greats, I'm not calling what the greats have done. Again, I'm going to say the names again, like the Lyle Blackburn, the Ken Gerhard, the Lauren Colemans, you know, a lot of the people that put out phenomenal publications. Well, when I started writing the book, that's exactly what it was, where, you know, the first chapter 1 was Wendigo, and I'm just regurgitating everything that, you know, everybody else had already done. And I'm like, well, how can I make this book different? What can I do? And I also want to take people on like a journey. Like, I'm like, well, how about I'm the guide. I'm guiding you through here. And we're going to talk about cryptids, but we're not just going to talk about cryptids. We're going to talk about the state, you know, and we're going to talk about the Native Americans, you know, a tribe that lived in that state, because like a lot of my research and study, like a lot of people start with the Patterson-Gimlin film and move forward. And I always say that I start with that and then I actually move backwards. I try to go as far back as I possibly can to get the rawest information as possible. So I sat down and I said, you know what, this is how I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to do all 50 states. I'm going to talk about the state, and I'm going to, you know, give some historical data, you know, when it achieved its statehood, and you know, different fun facts even about it as well. Because again, you know, I'm trying to look at this as like I'm kind of like a tour guide. And then, you know, I picked a Native American tribe out of, you know, each state, and highlighted them, you know, how they lived, different things that they did, how they hunted, how they ate. And then also some lore, you know, that you know, of a creature or being, whether it be spirit or flesh and blood, something that they feared or spoke about. And then I went into, you know, whatever the popular cryptid was of that actual state. Like, you know, West Virginia is the Mothman. So of course I you know, I talked about the Mothman, the history of the Mothman, and a lot of different things that the Mothman did. And then I wanted to close it out with a cryptid sighting, and I just targeted with Bigfoot. So I was sitting there and I'm like, okay, here's the deal. I don't want to just go in and just pull up, like go to a BFRO website or whatever, just pull stuff up and throw it in my book. I'm just like, you know, it's again, it's like I wanted this to be original, but obviously I can't get to all 50 states and just interview people. So I did use Google, like you'd mentioned. I used Google Maps, and what I did was I pulled up the state and I found an area that just had a lot of foresty area, and then I looked for the closest town that was near it, and then just zoomed in on it, saw what was there, saw the mom and pop stores, the barber shops, the diners, and just simply picked up the phone and called them and said, hey, I'm writing a book on cryptids, and I heard there's been some Bigfoot sightings in your area. What can you tell me, or who can you connect me with? And that's how I ended up getting one from every single state. You know, the other thing too was, you know, there were multiple people that I would talk to, and I didn't want to put multiple different sightings. I just wanted a specific one for that state. So for me, what really resonates with me when I'm talking to any witness is somebody who wasn't looking. Somebody that didn't believe, they were just going about their lives. They were fishing, they were hiking, they were just driving down the road. Those are the stories I actually went with. So there was probably one story or maybe two states that I actually brought in like an actual like recorded, it's in other books, encounter. Other than that, the rest of them, they were completely raw. The people that I talked to, a lot of them were willing to talk to me, but they weren't also forthcoming. A lot of them talked about how, it changed their lives. They weren't a believer before. They're still not a believer. They just don't understand what they saw, but this is what it looked like. So, there were a lot of people that were just like, oh yeah, were giving me all kinds of detail, this and that. But I went with the encounters where, again, they laughed at the subject prior. They wanted nothing to do with it prior. And they just simply saw something that they couldn't, that to this day they still don't quite understand. And it's, for some of it's really shaken them up. Others, they talk to me about it, but they're like, I'm not going to tell you this is what it was, but this is what it looked like. This is what I saw. And so those are the ones that really, really stuck out to me. And again, they were also, the sightings were seconds, like 3 to 5 seconds, 6 seconds, maybe at the most, where some of the other people I talked to, I mean, they would give you detail as if like they went out to eat with the creature. So for me, that was a little bit, that kind of pushed me away. So the encounters at the end are very, very raw, but that's how I was able to, get them, and without having to try to visit all 50 states, try to get witnesses. And I was able to, just do phone calls. And I'd say probably 70 to 80% of the people didn't want their name mentioned, which was also big for me, because it's like, okay, well, they're not looking to try to even get, their name in there. So I ended up just, there were people that were like, oh, it's perfectly fine. I ended up just making the decision. I wasn't putting anybody's names in it. I was just going to keep it consistent across the board. Plus I also didn't want to mess up and then put somebody's name in there that didn't want to, because I don't know what your guys' handwriting's like, but when I look at my handwriting and I try to read what I wrote after, sometimes I can't even read my own
Sometimes
writing.
it's bad.
Yeah.
Did you so in your investigation, did you ever run across somebody that just has entirely too much to add, and you're like, no, I think they're just pigging. Well, it did this, and then it shook my hand, and then it walked away, and you're like, dude.
The one that I always bring up is, there was a gentleman who I talked to, and he's like, oh yeah, I've seen a Sasquatch, I've seen Bigfoot, I've seen a lot of them. I'm like, really? I'm like, well, how many? And he's like, well, hundreds. And I just like click, I hung up. I'm just like, come on, it just, I just paid probably long distance charges, to hear that. But so yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like, some people were given detail, like it's like so much detail where it's like, okay, you're either telling me about something that you saw on a TV show, or just because this is what everybody says. Again, the people I spoke with, they were just very like, it was like, I saw it for like 3 seconds. I saw it for like 4 seconds, and that's 9 times out of 10, that's actually what one of these encounters actually entails. I saw it running across the road, and then it was gone,
So those are the ones that me and Craig and Austin, we toss back and forth sometimes. Those are the people that really need to be discredited in the groups, but the groups say no bashing. You're like, okay, well, I got a whole family in my backyard, and if they come to your backyard on a regular, take a picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you see them on a regular, you can get a picture. So It's like those are the people who need to be discredited, and the people like you, me, Austin, is like the people that would like to see one. And if we see one, we're going to give the exact account, what we see, nothing added, nothing taken out. Yeah. Hey, I walked across the road. I seen it, stood up and looked at me and kept going.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell folks, I'm like, look, anything that I say, like anything in my book, like I tell them, I'm like, I can't validate what these folks told me, because again, I'm hearing it from them, but when you read it out of the book, it's coming from me. Although, I made sure to keep my opinion out of everything. Like if you read the book, like I don't think I have my opinion say what I believe any part in there. Because again, for me, it was like, I was just kind of trying to, put something together where, people can read it and come together and, love it or hate it type of thing. But, for me, I just, I do a lot of scrolling, when I'm in a lot of the groups and, cause there's people, that have told me some incredible stories, but I also know that they're very credible people. So it's just like, man, so I just kind of, I walk a thin line. I mean, I call myself like a healthy skeptic because, it's too easy to really want to believe in it. And then, like anybody, people can, their minds can kind of go out of control. And I'm not saying that somebody that saw something didn't see something, but, for me, it's like, I question things, in a, politically correct way. And, I try to, be respectful, to the people, like I'll ask questions, but, for me, like, there's a lot of me that's I'm a big skeptic. I have not seen any cryptids. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I always say it like this: there's enough evidence right now to suggest that there is something going on in the woods, and in some of these areas, some of these lakes, some of these oceans, and some of these areas. There's definitely enough to believe, enough evidence that there's something going on. I don't know 100% what it is, and I mean, you've got individuals, that talk about it, it being flesh and blood, other individuals talk about it being flesh and blood, but also extraterrestrial. Some say paranormal in a sense and they're ghosts and, they go through portals. And the thing is like, I can't confirm or deny anything because it's just like it's one of those subjects too where I always say it like this, where I think it can become really reckless too because there's zero accountability when it comes to this subject. The example I always use, if somebody says to me, hey, black bears will turn their skin inside out during the summer to stay cool, well, I can go down to my local library. There's all kinds of different things that I can do, to find out that that's not true. Right now, I mean, this subject really is a free for all. And again, there's no accountability because there's nothing to actually go back on. So I think it's kind of can become really reckless sometimes. And what I mean by that is like, I don't want to like believe, like I want to know where, I think if I really wanted to believe, that kind of takes it to a level where, at least for me, I can't like, I think I'll be too easily pulled to one side where I don't want to be like that. But I'm also not somebody who also draws a line in the sand. And, I know many people that, will fight till the day that they die to say that they're paranormal or they're extraterrestrial. I just don't know. So again, hold on a second. I got a train going by me here. Oh, it's awesome.
No, I was going to say too, one of the things that it was one of the interviews that you had, and I really like the way you summed it up, is just for a lot of these people that claim to be a so-called expert, and they'll tell you, I am an expert in this field. You said it. How can you call yourself an expert when there is no established standards, accountability? I mean, I could come up and say, I am an expert in the Mothman. I know all these details about Moth. Well, it's one of those, well, how did, what certified you as an expert?
Right.
I mean, it's not like Harry and the Hendersons. I mean, if we're living, like you said, the old TV show, if you're living with Harry and Hendersons, I bet you can call yourself an expert because you physically live with a Sasquatch.
Exactly. And the other thing too is like, I've said it to people like this because when I say that there's no such thing as an expert, people usually will get upset that consider themselves an expert. And I'm like, well, hold on a second, hear me out. Mm-hmm. Again, when there's no accountability, you can't call yourself an expert in it. I do believe that there are professionals in it, people who do study it, and people that are, again, professional in what they do, how they conduct it, and it, you know, it's like with anything else. I mean, you've got people in every trade, in every career, every market, you know, people that, you know, are just are professionals in something, not necessarily an expert in it, but they're professionals. And so I definitely believe, again, you know, without a doubt, there's professionals in it. But, you know, I've had people for some reason, you know, come after me and be like, oh, I've been doing this for 30 years. And, you know, so I'm an expert. You don't know what you're talking about. First and foremost, I just say where I'm at. And second of all, if you've been doing this for 30 years and you haven't found Bigfoot, why are you giving me crap? You know, so, you know, and I don't want to come across like that, but, you know, it's just like, you know, why, first and foremost, what you're saying to me right now, you wouldn't be saying to my face, you know, so why are you acting like this? You know, so I get, you know, and then I've had people, you know, that have reached out to me and, you know, again, tried to tell me how I should be doing things and this and that. And, you know, again, you know, well, I've been doing this for blah, blah, blah. And I'm 46 years old, and I'm like, hey, I got a year on you. Oh, you thought I was in my 20s? You thought, like, you know, again, you know, it's just these researchers that don't do the simple research on somebody that they're about to try to call out on, which I think is hilarious. You know, I've had folks, you know, that, you know, have reached out to me and said how I should be doing things. You know, you shouldn't post so much. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. That's not what the community is like. And it's like, okay, in the last year and a half, yes, I came out of what I call the Cryptid Closet. Okay. I've been doing this since I was 4 years old. Look, I'm 47 years old. You know, a lot of people think I'm in like my late 20s, you know, maybe 30 years old. It's like, no, I'm literally in my 40s. And, you know, part of the reason was when I played music before, and I played in a lot of bands, you know, you know, we were on the radio, we were in record stores, you know, magazines, newspapers. I wanted to be, once I kind of retired the stages, I wanted to be out of any type of spotlight, any type of anything like that. So I was in all these groups. I was in all these communities. I was watching, I was talking with people. I just hadn't written a book that I needed to promote for a publisher, you know? And so, you know, so here I am, you know, and I tell people too, yes, you know, once I got published, the book Stanley Riker and the Bigfoot Runaround, the one before American Cryptids, I got signed to a publisher. Yeah, I started a marketing campaign for myself to help sell the book, because that's kind of what you do. I now have an obligation to the publisher. And again, I work in marketing, sales and marketing. So it's something that I do anyways. You know, I mean, I've got to, I guess, know something about something, because I mean, it was January of 2020 was when I really started pushing the book and kind of rolled out like the marketing campaign. And then by February, I was booked on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. And it's because one, because of the marketing plan, and two, because I've been studying this forever, you know? So it's just like,
yeah.
And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm just trying to say, it's just like, I don't know why people feel like they need to reach out to other people. And I've got mentors in this field. I mean, if I have a question about something, there's people I can reach out to. Like I can reach out to Ken Gerhard, who wrote the introduction for my book. You know, there's people I can reach out to that, you know, that would mentor me. And so I'm definitely not a loose cannon running around. You know, I'm trying to be, you know, stable.
I don't think you need to apologize. As I say, I don't think you need to apologize for, you know, like, you know, I don't mean to, like, I'm promoting myself, because it's one of those things. I think, like, in this community myself, we talked a little bit prior to the show that as a group, whether it's UFO community, you know, paranormal ghosts, I mean, it just doesn't matter, cryptids, Bigfoot, whatever group you're in, there has to be a certain period where we have people that say, you know, I've got this experience, and we look at them for advice, like, you know, I had this encounter, here's what I've got, what do you guys think? And what's going on is, and there's people that are afraid to say this, because either there's such a troll side where people are just like, you're an idiot, that's nothing, and they just bash them, But then you have the other side, which I almost feel is just as bad, is the ones that are like, oh my God, that is the most amazing evidence I've ever seen in my life. You're like, all you're doing is you're not enforcing a standard to where we can really further this research. You're basically telling somebody that Mona, I think it's Mona Piglet, I think she was the one that was talking about, she saw what would be, it's almost like an albino Sasquatch.
Yep.
So an albino version, which, I believe that that's a definite possibility. And I'll use her as an example. So like from here, if I used like the standards, which I kind of believe you are, this is something now, let's investigate this. Let's see what details are, what time of day. Let's go through this thing. But there's other people that are they just flat out like, oh my God. And then they run and there's a whole new wiki about the albino Sasquatch, and they're talking about their encounters with it. And this blur I just saw here is clearly the one that she talked about. And you're like, that's not, it's like, we actually have to focus on the case by case and not just because somebody says I did, and here's my photo. Oh my God, that's amazing. I don't see anything is just as valid as the person's experience. I don't discount the experiences because I wasn't there.
Agreed.
I didn't have the hair standing on the back of my neck experience that they did. And she just said, it was her, Snow White long hair, about 5-second encounter, which is like you said, it's a 5-second, this is more along your line. This is the type of thing. This isn't a prolonged, I sat down and had tea.
Exactly. 100%, and that's the thing, I always I've had people send me pictures and, I've just been like, guys, I just don't see it. I don't see what it is you're talking about. And I'm not telling you what you're seeing that it's not there. I'm just saying that I'm not seeing this. And the thing that I find funny too is in this community, the word theory seems to be like it's like a swear word to some people, because when you're saying theory, what you're actually saying to them is that they don't know what they saw, or they don't know what they're talking about, because the theory is an idea, it's a conversation. And so I've had a lot of people get really upset because I've used the word theory, and I was just like, look, it's a theory. Everything starts with a theory, whether we like it or not. But unfortunately, and it always starts on
the scientific things: hypothesis, theory, law. I mean, it always starts out I have a hypothesis that Bigfoot exists. You go out and you gather evidence. Well, now this is becoming a theory. There's a theory that this exists, and then once we actually have one physically, we're having a sit down, watching it in its environment. Now you basically, this is a physical law. This isn't in fact a real activity.
Yeah.
And I agree completely with you. I mean, that's what we need to do. And I mean, I don't think there's any arbiter that can say, well, now the Kenney Irish, standards are now what apply. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, how do we come up with a standard? But I also think it's just as dangerous to have the blurry photo where somebody says, you can clearly see I've got 15 Sasquatch sitting back here looking at me. You're like, don't you see all the faces? I'm like, yeah, I see a ton of things that look like a face. I also see it when I go in the bathroom and I look at the drywall. I see a face or two, on the drywall. And it doesn't mean that there's ghosts on my wall.
Yep.
It just means it was pretty cool. Whoever spackled my drywall in there, they made me a pretty cool looking, demon face out of the orange peel spackle.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I know a lot of people, that a lot of really good people, that they'll look at the pictures, they'll see it. And again, why I don't draw any lines in the sand is because I've actually, some individuals like that, I've actually learned different things from them as well. Not just, looking at, cause that's the thing is like, I don't want to, if somebody's like, do you see that? Do you see that? And I don't see it. That doesn't necessarily mean that, again, I have to discredit who they are or what it is that they believe. And there's definitely people that I've actually learned from when, stuff that they were saying, like I just couldn't even connect with. You know, again, you know, the folks, you know, when they talk about, you know, Sasquatch being, you know, paranormal, interdimensional, I'm more of a flesh and blood kind of guy. So I can't necessarily connect with it, but I'm definitely open to have that conversation, because there's definitely things that I've learned, whether it be good or bad, by having those conversations. I've talked with folks, you know, that believe that they're extraterrestrial, which I would lean more in that direction, because, you know, a lot of the time when we talk about, you know, extraterrestrial, we think of the grays, you know, we think of like the ET looking type of creatures. But why couldn't something that's extraterrestrial look like a Bigfoot? You know, why couldn't it be? I mean, we always bring this up, like Chewbacca in Star Wars. I mean, he looks like a Bigfoot, you know? So maybe they are extraterrestrial. There's folks that have claimed that they've seen what they believe to be an extraterrestrial spacecraft, and then saw Bigfoot running through the woods in front of them. There's folks that have claimed that they've actually seen them going up into a spacecraft. I can't confirm or deny it, but I want to at least have the conversation, you know, to a degree. Like, I don't, you know, like, you know, there's people where you can actually say, well, really, tell me more about it, or you can question it, and then they'll have a conversation with you. And then, you know, those are the conversations I want to have. But then there's others when you bring up theory or you question it. Well, you calling me a liar? No, I'm telling you I wasn't there. You know, so I was going somewhere with this, but I don't know where I went. I fell off the rails. You might be muted, Craig.
How about now?
Yeah,
better.
There you are.
There we go. Hey, so what I was saying is, I would actually, I think that there could be a possibility with that, because as I'm thinking, isn't there a lot of Bigfoot sightings that seem to coincide with UFOs in the area?
There are a lot of people that make that claim.
So in that one, it would make sense, because there's always been that thing. It's like, well, if Bigfoot exists, why can't we use infrared and go around and search? You know, we should be able to see them walking around in the woods. We should see them there. I mean, in a way, it would explain a few of the mysteries. Why we can't find habitat. We can't find, you know, a nesting or whatever, you know, the actual place where, you know, you should see sign of where they've set up some sort of camp, feeding something.
Sure.
You know, with a creature that size. So if this is the case, if they are something like this off world or some of these, that would make sense why we can't find these things, and why a lot of this time, like, the biggest thing is, how come we can't find, you know, we've never stumbled across a dead one.
Yeah.
You know, and people have says, well, you don't find dead bears out in the woods. I'm like, well, you actually, you do. You come across.
You have. Yeah. You have.
Yeah. It just, so if that's the case, I mean, there's been enough evidence, like, where, like Mona's case, I mean, there's enough people that have seen these things. They've seen something like this dating back way before us. You know, tribes have talked about the wild men, the hairy wild men out there. So obviously this isn't a creation of modern science fiction. This is something that has existed. So and most of these tribes weren't known for just making up, you know, things that there was something that they saw that they used, you know. I mean, of course they say, like, the sun is, you know, they'll give theories like that, but like, when you have stuff like the wildman, they're not just making this stuff up just as a way of, you know, hey, scaring the kids to get to bed.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, you think about it. Okay, so let's go back 200 years. What did they have to gain by doing it? Let's just go back just 100 years. What did they have to gain by doing it? You know, it's, again, and that's why I say, you know, like, I started with the Patterson and went backwards, you know, because I wanted to get, like, the rawest information I possibly could. Me, I love it. I love the subject. I've got a huge passion for it, but I do have a book to sell. What did they have to gain by saying it? And then the tribes nowadays, these stories have gone down in generation that are still telling them. What do they have to gain? Absolutely nothing. So there's something to it. There was, I mean, depending on which tribe, you look at, some have, mentioned about, how they lived in harmony together. Others mentioned how they would steal their women at night and, different things like that. But yet overall, the stories remain the same, as the generations, goes from generation to generation. And again, with absolutely nothing to gain, absolutely nothing to gain.
Yeah, no, I wonder. I looked up the time. I'm like, oh my god, time is just flying. I was like, I had 2 pages of stuff to go through. One of the ones I definitely, the couple of different things I wanted to get to you about is that I really liked, because I've always heard, especially Finding Bigfoot was a big proponent of the whacking the branch against the tree to communicate. But I really, the interview I was listening yesterday with you was, I really liked how you guys describe you're using a rock technique, how that has such a more distinctive communication style as opposed to the tree. And I'll let you kind of explain that to everybody.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that we noticed, we don't necessarily know, I mean, this is just what we've seen, over the years and what we've heard, we've seen on TV, the tree knocks. That's a way of communication. So when we go out, we don't necessarily go out saying these are the tools of the trade and this is what we're going to do and this is how this is going to all go. When we go out, we actually the founder of the group, Gary, his education and background is animal behavior. So when we go out, we actually pay more attention to the surroundings of what's going on with the different animals and things that are happening, because that will tell you a lot of what's going on in the area. But one of the things that really we would question a lot is when you would hear a tree knock. You'd hear it on somebody's recording or you'd hear it on TV, and it always sounded the same. But when people would they'd pick up the sticks, they'd hit the trees, it sounded different, depending on the width or length of the stick. A lot of the time the stick would just blow up and it never exactly sounded the same. So we were sitting there thinking, and again, I lean more to the flesh and blood side, and Gary's, in that same boat. So we're thinking, okay, primates, apes, gorillas, what do they do a lot of the time? They're clanging rocks together. They're using rocks to hit off of things. They throw rocks. They do a lot of things like that. And if there is some type of connection there, well, we're just like, well, why don't we try that? Why don't we try that? We'll throw some rocks at some trees, and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, it's not really going to make a whole lot of sound, because we're just going to throw it. It's going to bounce off. But what we found was every single time we took a rock and let's say we kept it in our hand and we hit it on the tree, or we threw it at the tree, it made that same exact sound every single time, no matter what tree it was. Some trees, it might have a little bit of a softer sound, but it had that same crack noise every single time. So for us, we're looking at it. We're not saying, okay, well, this is what's happening, that Sasquatch are using rocks. But we're saying that this is kind of puts us in a different direction, because when we hear them back, and we actually had this on a recording, we would hear them, we'd hear it back, and again, it never sounded like a stick hitting a tree. It just never sounded like it. And this, every single time, it sounded almost identical. So that's what we started doing. We started throwing rocks at trees, and sometimes we found out too, when we were in front of the tree and we were hitting it with the rock, it didn't necessarily make that crisp crack noise. But then we'd have other researchers that were, let's say, 200 yards away from us that heard it, and it made that crack noise. To them, it sounded like it, the way that it carried, the echo carried. That's
cool.
So it definitely, it's again, it doesn't prove anything. But the other thing too is, when has anybody ever seen a Sasquatch carrying a stick? I've never talked to anybody. The only person that I've talked to that actually said that they saw one holding one in their hand. It was like a big log type of thing, and they were hitting it up against a tree. Other than that, I've never really heard that. But if they're carrying a rock, say they've got a rock in their hand, and that's what they use to communicate, well, you're not going to notice a rock in their hand anyways. But if the rock in their hand is their form of communication, let's say it is, we don't 100% know. I mean, what are we as human beings always walking around with our hand? We have our phone in our hand because that's our way of communication, So it is as silly as it sounds, why not?
Yeah, there's all those tales of the boulders. You've got those, kids hiking, next to a river, or the dad's out fishing. You do something, and all of a sudden, you just have that loud, the splash. Well, that's not a fish, and that's not a random rock that just threw itself off of, as the kid was yeeted itself into the river. That's not, so this is obviously a known phenomenon that all of a sudden random rocks are being tossed. So it would make sense, like you said, that where you guys did this, tested this, had this hypothesis, you tested it out, and it's now become a pretty, I would say myself personally, I believe it's a valid theory that this is actually something that would make sense, because it's easier to palm a rock and just have that and, throw it out there as some form of, attention getter, just as opposed to, like I said, carrying some large tree branch.
Yeah. And one other thing too, that we're looking at, because we've never actually, people have had rocks thrown at them, but usually when it's thrown at them, it's a real small, I've never heard of anybody actually talking about there was this huge rock thrown directly at them. That it was always something smaller or whatever, so one of the things, that we're kind of looking at too, because, one of our ambassadors was out and he had a rock hit him in the head. It was a small rock, and the belief was that it was thrown at him. But then, again, when we start looking at animal behavior, different things like this, well, how do we know it didn't fall from a tree? Now, why would a little rock fall from a tree? Well, here's the thing. Okay, birds pick up all kinds of crap off the ground to build nests. Squirrels pick stuff up all the time to build nests. They carry all kinds of stuff. So who's to say that, with hitting the trees, making the racket, that something like that didn't come down and fall? Because you have to think, every time somebody shows me, the rock that was thrown at them, it's this tiny little thing. So if something is 8 feet tall, why is it going to pick up this tiny little rice-sized thing and throw it at somebody? So, and again, I'm not saying that that it's not, but what I'm saying is that who's to say that it didn't fall from a nest? Who's to say that this bird's flying through the air and it's carrying some debris, and some of it fell because it went to dodge you, or it saw you. Again, not saying that that's what it is, but there is a logical, in a sense, way of why it could be happening. Because again, this tiny little pebble, that to me, that doesn't make any sense. That really doesn't make any sense. And some folks have said, well, because they don't want to hurt you. They just want you out of the area. Well, there's other ways that they could get me out of the area, because when little tiny pebbles get thrown at you, who's ever left the area? We don't. We stick around and we start talking about how we just had a little pebble hit us. Nobody ever leaves the area. We stick around. So, again, I'm not saying that, we've discovered anything, but it's just okay, well, we've got to take this into consideration.
Yeah. Because another thing, where animals throw stuff, because anybody that's been out in the woods, where I came from in Oregon, we had really large gray squirrels, and those things were notorious for chewing on a little branch and lobbing pine cones and those branches at you. They drop them at you as as a warning to go away. So it's just, all of a sudden you just get hit in the head with this clump from a pine tree, and you're like, you just hear this, up there, this squirrel's just all chattered at you. You're just like, so it would make sense that, something bigger like that would lob something large at you as a warning. You're too close. Hey, go away.
I was at the ocean, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, and there was this little crab. and I picked it up, and it was in my hand, and the thing started pulling its own legs off and throwing them at me. So I hurried up. I hurried up and put him back in the water because I didn't want him to, make himself, so he couldn't defend himself. But he threw like awesome. three of his legs at me. So again, who's to say, I don't know. Animals, they can maybe throw things when they feel like they're threatened.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean and it's what is, man, I'm looking at the time. Look at that. It's incredible.
I think about this all the time. I'm a fishing guy. I love the ocean. Mm-hmm. I'm glad we haven't explored, but why haven't we? We're doing everything we can to leave Earth and explore Mars, all this other kind of shit. And like what Chassis says about sea monsters recently about the submarine that was just broken in 3 pieces. Do you think we have already been to the depths and realized we shouldn't be down here, so we just left it alone?
I think we probably have, and I think like with anything else, it's going to be a matter of time before they act, agencies actually tell us about it. Because I mean, for instance, I always say this, the government decided to wait until there's a pandemic, to tell us that, by the way, yes, there are unidentified flying objects, for the longest time, but by the way, you're going to die of coronavirus. So then all of a sudden, boop, deflection. So
yeah, exactly.
I think that there definitely is more. And have you guys ever seen that movie, The Meg?
Yeah,
I watched part of it. It's after a while, I'm just like, oh, this is so over the top.
Yeah. Well, what I thought was cool about it was like they go down and where they think they're actually at the bottom of the ocean, they're not.
Yeah.
And then they realize there's another level, and that they go down there, and that's where that like the megalodon shark is, and all these creatures that they've never seen. So, and who knows? Again, some maybe there's some type of truth to that. I don't know, something being passed down. But like I said, I think there's agencies, and I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but yet at the same time you kind of have to be when you're not necessarily told stuff. I definitely think that there's government agencies know a lot more than what they're telling us. And we have to, that's one thing that I think everybody can agree on, considering again, now they're talking about, they're unidentified flying objects, and they're saying, that, they're right there and then they disappear, but yet it's not us. So but then again, these very well could be, the government just covering up what they don't want other countries to know that we're doing. I don't know, but the one thing that we can stand on is that they did say yes, there are such thing as unidentified flying objects. Have they necessarily come out and said yes, there are aliens on these? I haven't really seen anything that's actually said that, but it's a step in the right direction where a lot of people aren't like, okay, I told you, I'm not totally crazy. I just look this way.
Yeah. I was just thinking like what you were talking there. It just popped in my head, kind of your technique that you did for this book. Have you thought about doing that for these same locals that have those unexplained experiences with, everybody says like Men in Black, but we're talking about you're hiking in the woods, you see a light, next thing you know, military vehicles are in there. That forest road is shut down. Can't go back, in your hunting spot for a little while. You come back in there, and there's no sign that they're ever in there. But you've got those 2 loggers that are like, yeah, we were kicked out of that stand. They went in there, they found something, and they left. Have you ever thought about putting together those kind of stories too? Because that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. There we go.
I'll say that I'm in the process of an outline. I can go that far and say that.
Awesome.
So.
Hey.
Well, it's the same thing. Craig, we talked about it before about the whole 2004 Castleberry UFO thing. Back where I used to live in Castleberry near Orlando, 2004, 4th of July, this like shine of light, right behind my house, pretty much, like less than a mile away. This big explosion heard for 30 miles away. You look it up, July 4th Castleberry, it'll pop right up. And within 30 minutes to an hour, just black SUVs surrounding it, and the next day there's a huge crater and nothing's found. I was like, hold on a second. You know what I mean? Like, where does Crater come from, and where these SUVs suddenly come from and disappear overnight? So
yeah, I've actually there's some people that I'm real close to, and they were talking to some individuals, that were in the military and different things like that. And when they were leaving the person's house, they were confronted, talked to, and one of them was saying something about, or maybe it was even both of them, but I know for a fact one of them, their bank account for 5 days suddenly was frozen. So,
jeez.
what? Jesus
No,
God.
I just look at it. We need to let you go, man. It's like we've had you. So here, I want everybody to real quick. I'm going to put these up on the screen again for everybody to see. Here, you need to go to kwirish.com. That's his website. It's going to tell you all about him, events coming up, events he's been to, links to his Facebook page, to the New York Bigfoot Society, publishing, Beyond the Fray Publishing. Also on Amazon, you can go buy that right now. Kindle, downloaded right now and start reading this book. I mean, you will enjoy it. This is fantastically written. It is a great thing. Or if you want the physical copy, like I saw, you can get that. And I mean, we're talking, it can be delivered to you in under a week. So you're going to get that book really, really quick through that way too. But is there anything I want to let you plug, sir, that you'd like to let everybody know, either upcoming or something else other works that you'd like to steer them towards?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. My other publication, which is a young reader's chapter book from ages, I'd say maybe like 6 to 10 or 11, called Stanley Riker and the Bigfoot Runaround. You can get that on Amazon as well. As far as events coming up, in August, I'm going to, and you can get all this on my website. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. In August, I'm going to be in Port Henry, New York, at the Lake Champlain Champ Monster Festival. And so I'm really excited about that. Paul Bartholomew is going to be there, big Bigfoot guy from Whitehall, New York. Everybody knows, Whitehall, New York's the epicenter of the East Coast of Bigfoot sightings. In September, I'm actually going to be in Whitehall, New York at the Bigfoot Sasquatch Festival that they have every year. I believe that's the 25th. I'll be there presenting, speaking at that. I'll have books there as well. And then let me see. And then October, I believe the 15th, 16th, and 17th, I'm going to be at DeadCon in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'll be appearing there. Ken Gerhardt will be there as well as movie actors like Kane Hodder, who played Jason Voorhees, Ari Lehman, who played Jason Voorhees in the first movie, the Boy in the Lake. All kinds of different actors from horror movies.
That's cool.
Sci-fi, and then in November, I'll be in Lexington, Kentucky, speaking and presenting at Crypticon with actually all 4 members of the Finding Bigfoot, and there'll be a bunch of other people that are going to be announced as well. So if anybody's in any of those areas, and you're coming out, please come over and say hi. I'm a people person. I just love to meet people.
Quick question, man. For anybody else on the show, how can they get a signed copy? And I would like to see how I can get a personal signed copy of the children's book for my kids.
Sure. Yeah. You could just hit me up through Messenger. So you can just friend request me on there. So that way obviously the message comes right to me. It doesn't sit in spam. At Kenney W. Irish, the Cryptopunkologist on Facebook. Look me up and just send me a message, and we'll work it out and make it happen.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. It's open invitation, man. We'd love to have you back on.
Sure. Yeah. We could definitely work something out.
So we'll definitely, because I want to get you back on to have a long, because I don't want to. We're having such a great one, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to hold you forever. And I'm looking at, we're already at hour 15. It's amazing how fast that goes.
Yeah.
But so everybody, once again, go to kwirish.com, check out his website, go to Amazon, buy those books, support him, check him out on the events coming up. If you can make it to Lake Champlain event, that would be a fantastic one as well. But Kenny, I really appreciate you, sir. Thank you again for reaching out and having me on. I love talking to you guys. So we'll definitely do it again, without a doubt. All right. Sounds good, man. Have a great night.
All right, you as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everybody. This episode was brought to you by Nanny Cakes. Nancy Burt, Nanny Cakes 407 on Facebook. Go to 407-923-2898 is the phone number there. We have a new merchandise store out. Go to redbubble.com. Three Beards Podcast is the shop. Get our new merchandise out there. We've already had 3 people buy t-shirts. I want to thank you guys very much. It is a true honor that you are willing to invest in us. That means a lot to us. Can't thank you enough. We're rebroadcast every Thursday night by Patriot Radio. Download the Zeno radio app on Thursdays at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, the courtesy of jjbeardco.com. Thank them for that. Follow us on all the social medias. We are there. Go to our page or website in threebeardspodcast.com. That also links to the store. Website was updated a little bit, so that'll link you to everything there. So that's been fixed. Thank you. So everybody, thank you for watching. Kenny W. Irish, really appreciate you coming on. Everybody for watching. We will talk to you guys later. Good night.